Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Manitoba Start is the leading provider of career services to newcomers in the province of Manitoba and connects businesses to a world-class workforce. I would like to welcome you all to this Labor Market Connection webinar, a series of live broadcasted events designed to assist you in entering the Manitoba labor market. To begin, Manitoba Start operates from Treaty 1 territory, the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene people, and homeland of Métis people. We acknowledge that our water is sourced from Shoal Lake for the First Nation. Acknowledging this truth is important, yet only a small part in cultivating strong relationships with Indigenous communities. Today's webinar is focusing on the Internationally Trained Lawyers Program, University of Manitoba. My name is Eda Can. I am Labor Market Connections Coordinator here at Manitoba Start, and I will be your host for today's webinar.
Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Rabha Mazer et je travaille pour Manitoba Start en tant que traductrice en français. Et je serai ici pour vous aider avec toutes les questions que vous aurez. Bienvenue encore et merci beaucoup.
Given the large number of participants who joined this webinar, we have muted your microphone to allow for better clarity and less interference. Before we begin, I will be going over a couple of housekeeping items. You can use the raised hand feature to indicate that you have a question or comment. To do this, you can click on the Participants button in the meeting controls, find the raised hand icon next to your name and click on it. This will notify us that we have a raised hand. Teams webinars provide a Q&A feature that allows attendees to ask questions specifically in the Q&A panel. To access this, click on the More Options, 3 dots button in the meeting controls and select Q&A. You can then type your question in the Q&A panel. Before I introduce our presenter for today, I would like to run a few polls to get to know you better. So the first poll asks, are you registered with Manitoba Start? Yes or no? I will give you a moment to answer. %80 said yes and 20% said no. On our second poll today, do you need help with resume, cover letter, or interview preparation? Yes or no? Again, I will give you a moment to answer. %40 said yes and 60% said no. On our third poll today, where are you joining us from today? Northern Manitoba, Southern Manitoba, Winnipeg, outside of Canada? I'll give you a moment to answer. %100 said Winnipeg. And on our last poll for today, what is your reason for attending this webinar? Are you an internationally educated professional, settlement worker, career coach, or other? Again, I will give you time to answer. Oh, 100% said internationally educated professional on the polls. Thank you everyone for participating in the polls. Today's webinar is with the University of Manitoba Internationally Trained Lawyers Programs. This presentation will explain details and benefits of the program to internationally educated lawyers. Laurel Harris is the Director of Internationally Trained Lawyer Program at Robson Hall. A lawyer since 2001, she specializes in mediation, arbitration, and conflict resolution. She found that Harris Law Solutions and Equitable Solutions Consulting to promote equity in organizations. So please welcome Laurel Harris from University of Manitoba. Over to you, Laurel.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the warm welcome. I appreciate it. Thank you for the introduction, which is actually a great place for me to lead in. I have a short PowerPoint presentation for folks that I will walk through, and then we can take some questions at the end. But I also wanted to just sort of speak a bit about what my experience has been. I'm not internationally trained. I was trained here at University of Manitoba Faculty of Law. And I practiced in province my entire career. Until 6 months ago, I practiced for almost 23 years in private practice, in a firm all the way through to the full partnership level. And I've also practiced as a sole practitioner and everything in between. So I bring that experience with me, and it's part of the reason I was recruited to take this position to develop and launch the Internationally Trained Lawyer Program here at Robson Hall. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm assuming that folks can see it okay. And so I will get us started. So the Internationally Trained Lawyer Program at University of Manitoba actually offers what are called micro-diplomas, 2 micro-diplomas, and I'll talk a bit more about those in a few minutes. But these programs are designed to provide a flexible and clear pathway to become licensed to practice law in Canada. And these programs are designed to satisfy the Federation of Law Societies National Committee on Accreditation, or NCA, to fulfill those requirements to obtain certificates of qualification, which is what allows you to pursue articles in any common law jurisdiction in Canada. So we are welcoming our first cohort in September 2025. Applications are still open until March 31st, with some time after that to submit documents, all the way until April 30th to submit documents. But we've generated a lot of excitement about this program through the internationally trained legal community. And what my goal in all of this, because I also do a lot of work and have done a lot of work in the area of equity and inclusion, is to also remove barriers, both within the law school that are unintended, but nevertheless perhaps present, and also to start addressing the barriers that happen when folks do get their certificate of qualification and what happens when they're trying to move and transition into practice in Manitoba. My role is to design and launch the program. Other folks passed the framework of this program through the University of Manitoba Senate, and that defines what the program can and cannot do. So within those confines, my job is to make sure that this program works well with our other academic programs, including our Master of Human Rights and LLM program. I will be teaching part of one of the courses that will be offered to everyone as a required course called Preparation for the Practice of Law in Canada. That I'll talk a bit more about that course in a little while. And then again, what we're doing here is building an academic program as the core around the programmatic elements that are going to have the most impact for lawyers. What do people really need to succeed and empowered through the program? And then lastly, I view my role as an advocate within the profession to deepen connections between University of Manitoba and our bar. I do that in a number of ways. I meet regularly with senior staff at the Law Society of Manitoba, at the Manitoba Bar Association, and other members of the profession. I work with two other directors here at U of M in the law school, the Director of Access to Justice and the Director of Program Development. The Director of Professional Development, rather. And together, we make a good team with our overlapping portfolios. One of the things that we want to do is to change the language around how we talk about internationally trained lawyers and their value in the profession. Internationally trained lawyers are fantastic, make fantastic contributions to our profession, are incredibly strong folks doing great work. And some of that gets lost sometimes. This program, either micro-diploma, are for internationally trained lawyers who have common law degrees or come from a mixed jurisdiction, such as the Philippines, perhaps. Graduates with Canadian civil law degrees are also candidates for our private law micro-diploma. I'll get into that in a second. And internationally trained lawyers with civil law degrees also are potentially a group of folks who can attend this micro-diploma. And I'll get into that in a bit. So actually, I'll get into it now. If you are a lawyer who's from a civil law jurisdiction, you're from, France or a civil law jurisdiction in Africa or Colombia, any kind of place where there's a civil law that training and practice, the National Committee on Accreditation actually doesn't even assess those folks. So I'll talk to you a bit about what that means in a minute. So the National Committee on Accreditation, the NCA, is a committee that is formed by the federations of law societies. So all the common law federations of all the common law societies in Canada form the Federation of Law Societies, and the NCA is a committee on that. They're really a entirely separate body with their own executive director, but that's how they're structured and that's how they appear. And their job, the job of the NCA, is to make sure that all people who were trained outside of Canada meet a Canadian equivalent to a JD, or what we used to call an LLB. The 5 subjects that you see on the left of the screen of the slide, those subjects are required by the NCA no matter what, whether you go to school at the University of North Dakota or you graduate from a school in the UK or anywhere else in the world. These 5 core courses, all persons have to demonstrate competency in those courses. And people can demonstrate competency one of 2 ways, and I'll talk to you a bit about that in a second. In addition, since 2022, the NCA requires everyone to demonstrate competence in legal research and writing. Depending on the law school people went to, they might be exempted from that or not. It depends on what the NCA decides. The NCA can also require students to take, internationally trained lawyers to take other courses, depending on which law school folks went to, whether they learned online or in person or a combination, and what grades were received, amongst other factors. So some folks, for example, I've seen NCA assessment reports that say, take those 5 core subjects, but you didn't do so well in property, so we need you to take property again, or we need you to take contracts again. So that does occur. Sometimes folks will be expected, there is a language requirement to be able to fully deliver services in either English or French. Often that language assessment is waived, but if it's not, it does have to be met. It doesn't have to be met through our program. However, I'll get to that in a second as well. Sometimes the NCA also assigns 1 or 2 years of in-person learning, consisting of other courses that they have approved. So what can be assigned by NCA can be quite broad, but often, I'm going to go back 1 slide, often just ends up being these 5 courses that I indicated previously. So how do you get to the point where you practice law in Canada? The first step is you apply to the NCA for an assessment. And what you do when you contact them, they will ask you questions, you'll submit your credentials, you'll request official transcripts, which will have to be converted into a Canadian GPA equivalent, etc. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if you've been trained in a civil law jurisdiction, you won't actually get an assessment report. What you'll get is a letter. And the letter will say, we do not recognize any of your credentials. If you would like to practice law and become licensed in Canada, you will either need to take a JD, a Juris Doctor program, or there's a second letter that says you will need to get substantial exposure to the common law. My apologies. You will need substantial exposure to the common law. And after you've completed 4 core courses, you can ask us to review your file. Otherwise, if it's a common law jurisdiction or a mixed law jurisdiction, what would be obtained is an NCA assessment report. And based on the combination of factors I mentioned earlier, plus other factors that I don't even know about, it's a very, they know their stuff and they're experts at that. Through that, they will create an assessment report that says these are the subjects which you need to complete by this date in order to get a certificate of qualification. That's the certificate that means you have the equivalent to a JD. So step 2 has 2 options. You can enroll at our law school or a different law school out of province and study with peers or professionals in class. Some programs are offered online. Our program does not offer online learning, and I'll talk about why in a few moments. The second option is self-study and then writing NCA exams. So some folks mix this up. They will do self-study and write certain NCA exams themselves, but they don't feel that they can or should do everything through the NCA exams. Other folks will need in-person learning, and therefore self-study isn't an option for them in the same way an NCA will tell folks what is an option and what's not. But these are the 2 options, either studying in a law school or engaging in self-study and taking NCA exams, or a combination of the 2. Once all of the NCA's requirements have been met according to your particular assessment report, NCA issues a certificate of qualification. That means that you have the equivalent to a Juris Doctor, a Canadian Juris Doctor, and you now are able to get articles and work under supervision for a year, as well as take prep, which is the bar admission course, just like anyone who graduates with a JD. And then finally, when those the articles are complete and the bar admissions requirements are complete, there's an application for admission and a call to the bar, and then folks are able to practice law. The micro-diploma in public law is the micro-diploma that most people are going to end up selecting, at least at first instance. This program is designed to allow people, if they choose to complete all 5 of those core common law courses that every single person who wants to practice in Canada in a common law jurisdiction has to take and demonstrate competency in. We require 4 courses. Preparation for the study of law in Canada is a 0 credit hour course. It occurs in August for 2 weeks prior to the start of the term. I'll talk more about what is in that class, but it is designed to give everyone who is an internationally trained lawyer coming into the program a leg up on the things that they're going to need to know to be able to successfully practice law in Manitoba, and also hopefully make the experience of studying easier. Criminal law and procedure, constitutional law, and administrative law are all required by the program. Those are 3 of the 5 core courses. There are another up to 5 credit hours left, elective credit hours left, including clinical and experiential course offerings. But the other 2 courses that are needed to complete those 5 can be completed within this micro-diploma in 1 year if people choose, by going to school Monday to Friday during business hours from September to April. So that would be how one could complete it. One is not required to complete the micro-diploma in 1 year. If people want to, they can extend their study and flatten out the time. Especially if people are trying to juggle work commitments and caregiving commitments, some folks may try to choose to stretch things out a bit, and that's okay. But that is the basic structure of the micro-diploma. The micro-diploma in private law also starts with preparation for the study of law in Canada, but focuses on the private law courses that would be assigned to people who have a Canadian civil law degree. This would allow people with a Canadian civil law degree to finish again with the micro-diploma and give them up to 3 additional elective credit hours. Excuse me. Some folks may choose to take both micro-diplomas, particularly folks who have been assigned by NCA, not only those 5 core courses, but also contracts, torts, and property. Oops, my apologies. The program features. So academic excellence, that's key for what we do here. And I have to say, in being at the university full time, I used to teach here as a sessional instructor. I taught family law for a while. I taught an upper level course once, and I've always sort of been involved with the law school. And what I'm seeing time and again from folks who have come through our program, including internationally trained lawyers, they come back and they talk about how great their experience was here and that they got really good training. And we're really proud of that. Experiential learning. If people want to, as I said earlier, do a mix of exams and courses in law school and choose to use those optional credit hours for something different, options include 3 credit hour options to do clinics, potentially in business law, family law, criminal law, international human rights law, and there's one more I'm forgetting, but I'll get to it because it's on another slide, I promise. And then the last piece is the supportive environment. My task and what I believe is that we need to build this program in a way that includes wraparound supports for folks, mentorship opportunities, career services, and enable success in a way where we actually take a look at what are the actual problems that people are finding. And so to design this program, and since I started the University of Manitoba full-time in September, we have done consultations with internationally trained lawyers in the province over and over again. And we're working really closely with internationally trained lawyers, especially the internationally trained lawyer section of the MBA. And so that is the third piece, which I think differentiates us from other programs. Now, what are we not? What can we not do? We're a small law school, comparatively speaking. And so we cannot offer evening classes at this time. We cannot offer online classes at this time. We also got feedback from internationally trained lawyers who actually said that they really wanted the in-person learning experience, that because they had only written the exams, when they got into practice, they found that it was quite isolating. They hadn't met anybody. They had not started to establish professional relationships with peers or with other people already working in the profession. And they didn't, that sense of isolation is something that folks reported over and over again that was really a drawback for them. It also has been reported that doing self-study alone from some of our consultations, people felt that wasn't always the easiest way to then get articles and get employed because they don't have access to all of the systems around recruitment. And so those are the program features that we can offer. We have an extremely good relationship with the bar, with the judiciary here in Manitoba, and we work really hard to maintain those relationships. Generally speaking, classes are offered, as I said, Monday to Friday during the day. Most subjects are offered once a week for 2 to 3 hours, depending on the subject. So for example, this year, and I don't have the course schedules for next year, it's a bit more complex because we have to make sure some of the courses that are required are actually second-year courses and some are first-year courses. So we're still working on the scheduling for next year. But by way of example only, this year, constitutional law is always taught on Tuesday afternoons from September to April. Criminal law is always taught this year from September to April on Friday mornings. So it's usually once a week for 3 hours. Preparation for the study of law in Canada is designed and provides an important introduction to skills required to successfully study law and ultimately practice law in Canada, including cultural literacy. How do you work with marginalized clients effectively to maximize access to justice and minimize harm by the way that we treat people, by not understanding cases because we don't understand their backgrounds? Canadian legal systems. One of the core courses is called Foundations of Canadian Law. That is a course that at the law school called Legal Systems. This course here, Preparation for the Study of Law, won't replace that, but it'll give an early introduction to the Canadian legal histories and legal systems, including Indigenous legal orders. Again, just to give you an early introduction before you leap in, particularly if you choose not to take legal systems with us and you choose to self-study. That's another way of getting your feet wet, so to speak. Legal research, analysis, and writing. We're going to start early with building and introducing folks to legal research systems, to legal analysis, and start with writing. And so that's how we want to start get folks started and get a leg up. Why are we starting with writing all the way in August? So that if folks have difficulty with the legal writing culture in Canada and specifically in Manitoba, that we have time to teach folks what the differences are. There's I reject this very strongly. There are what we call deficit thinking, where people assume that if someone is writing in a different tradition, it means that they don't know how to write. That's not really accurate. But what we do know is that the writing culture in the UK, the writing culture in Nigeria, the writing culture in other jurisdictions is very, very different from our writing culture. And so we're going to get started as quickly as possible, figuring out where folks need to go so that we can make sure that legal writing and research is a skill that is more easily developed. There will be a section around ethics. This course is required and it's a pass-fail course. But it is, in our view, critical for the success of our students. Other jurisdictions don't necessarily do it the same way. This is actually modeled after a program, a summer law program that was intended for Indigenous students entering law school, where they take one course in the summer. This is not as intensive as one full course, but it is nevertheless an introduction. The micro-diplomas can be taken with each other, and they can also be taken with a Master of Laws or a Master of Human Rights. Separate applications are required for the Master of Laws and Master of Human Rights programs. Those are graduate degrees. Sometimes we can also meet NCA requirements through a combination of the two, but we have to do that very, very carefully in terms of course selection. But those learning paths are customizable. As I mentioned earlier, we have expected internships. We've got the delivery of legal information in French confirmed, international human rights laws confirmed, and criminal laws confirmed. Those clinics, we're in the process of confirming clinics in business law and family law, but we're expecting to be able to do so. In terms of career services, the feedback, as I said earlier, from various sources is that folks are left to flounder. And so giving basic career services and other law school services, even for students who would apply through what used to be called our NCA category, and they would just take the classes but got no supports, they were falling through the cracks. Even though they were entitled to career services, they were missing those opportunities for support. We've taken a hard look at our internal processes already and figured out ways that we can make sure internationally trained lawyers fit well into our recruitment cycle, because the recruitment cycle starts really early in first year of a JD program. And so internationally trained lawyers' entry points are not smooth and they don't fit that really well. We're committed to develop both making sure that we can get people into those existing career professional development opportunities, but also like trying to create some opportunities specifically for internationally trained lawyers here at the law school, inviting firms and other agencies in. Early identification of professional interests and career opportunities. And with the Career Services Office is going to provide a dedicated orientation and front of the line service to people in the ITL program for resume and cover letter development, and figuring out what those opportunities are. So it's something that we offer to all our program students, but the extra bits that we are building in is going to be some specific programming explicitly for internationally trained lawyers. In terms of strategic partnerships, as I mentioned earlier, the Law Society of Manitoba is absolutely one of our partners. Legal Aid Manitoba, which is one of the largest employers of lawyers in our province, across the province, is another strategic partnership of ours. And the Manitoba Bar Association. Last year, a group of internationally trained lawyers formed Canada's first Manitoba Bar Association section specifically for internationally trained lawyers. And they also are creating opportunities for lawyers through that process. All students at U of M in our law school automatically receive a student membership to the Manitoba Bar Association and can participate in those events right off the top. But again, we'll have ongoing strategic partnerships with all of these groups to make sure that we're doing the best we can for our students. Admission requirements, a current NCA assessment report that's no more than 4 years old. It is possible to get an NCA report extended if you're enrolled in a program, but your NCA deadline expires previously. You just have to write to NCA and make sure they're okay. So it's not a guarantee. I never speak for the NCA, but you can get a report extended, at least under some circumstances. So if that applies to you, you might want to contact the NCA. If you were educated in a civil jurisdiction, you will get a letter that says we're not recognizing anything. As I mentioned earlier, we're treating that as equivalent to an NCA assessment report. Academic transcripts, a personal statement, 1,500 words, any topic. We don't care what it's about. We just want to give students the ability to shine and demonstrate why they should be admitted into our program. Current resume or CV, 2 letters of recommendation, a professional writing sample, and proof of English language proficiency if that's required. And I need to be really clear. NCA has English proficiency requirements, and we do, and they are completely different. So for admission, you need to make sure that you meet the English language proficiency requirements of our program, and those are available on our website. Right now, cost of domestic tuition per micro-diploma is $22,000. This is one of the least expensive programs in the country. Programs range anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000 and more per program. We recognize the cost is a significant cost. We are working on addressing barriers relating to eligibility for financial aid within our law school for Manitoba residents. That won't be available for the 2025-26 school year likely, but we're hoping that by 2026-27's academic year, we will also have some eligibility for financial aid that we can use across the law school, including the ITL program. If people feel that they can't finish the program in a year, we have what's called a continuation fee, so that if folks need to spend a second year or even a third, you can do that for a significantly reduced fee. It's not another $22,000. The fee is $3,750 per semester, but because most of our courses straddle 2 semesters, it's really $7,000. That would be the continuing fee that would apply. By contrast, for example, the University of Alberta has a 1-year program, and you can only take courses for that 1 year. And if you want to continue, it's an extra $30,000 tuition fee. Application deadlines for us this year, the 2025-26 academic year, the deadline to apply is March 31st. Document deadline is April 30th. If you're worried about documents not getting to us in time, please contact me and we can discuss it. The academic year for 26-27, this application window opened late and it's closing late. It will probably open earlier next year, and we will give folks lots and lots of notice as to when the window will be opening and closing. I won't say for certain, but my guess is that it's going to close in January or February and open probably around September, October instead of November. If you're ready to apply or you're ready to have your credentials assessed, on your screen are two QR codes. On the left is a QR code that will take you to the NCA's website, and you can start figuring out how to get your credentials assessed if you haven't done that yet. And on the right is the link to apply to our program. We hope that we get y'all into our program. We're really excited to do some good, and we're really excited in particular to work with folks who are in the province. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I will take questions from folks. Whatever folks want to ask, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Laurel, for that informative presentation. Now we will open it up to the audience. Do we have any questions? Again, please type your questions in the question panel box or raise your hand and we will unmute you so you can ask your question. We welcome both English and French questions and we will try to get through as many as time permits.
Alors, est-ce que nous avons des questions? Encore une fois, veuillez taper vos questions sur le panneau de questions-réponses ou lever la main et nous réactiverons votre micro pour que vous puissiez poser votre question. Nous essaierons d'en traiter autant que le temps le permettra.
Thank you, Rapa. And if you have questions, please type them in the chat box too. There is one question here. How viable is working while pursuing this micro-diploma?
It's doable. What this is, if you're doing the micro-diploma and you're doing all 5 courses or you're maximizing the load, it's 18 credit hours, which is a full course load would be 30 credit hours. So it is doable. The major barrier that people are going to have is whether or not the class schedule meets their obligations and they can get the flexibility at work. But in terms of the workload, is it possible to work? Yes, it is absolutely possible to work while doing the micro-diploma. The question will be, depending on what kind of work people have. If people have a full-time job that's Monday to Friday with no flexibility, this might not be the best program, unfortunately. If you can work flexibility into the schedule, as I said, it's entirely doable.
Thank you so much. And there is one more question in the Q&A panel. Are there any hands-on training or practicum opportunities?
Yes, there are. So as I said, there are 3 credit hour clinical learning opportunities. Those clinics, the business law clinic, we're not yet confirmed, but we're hoping to be able to confirm. There will likely be a family law clinic. And then we already have confirmed criminal law clinics, international human rights law clinics, and the delivery of legal information in French through Info Justice.
There is a question in the chat box. I just completed my NCA exams through self-reading. Do you have any package for prospective articling students to integrate to Manitoba legal system?
Unfortunately, no, we don't. I'm sorry. Congratulations on getting your exams done, though. That's a huge accomplishment. And that's very exciting. I think, though, if you're looking for articling placement, I'm trying to remember the name. There is an area, contact the Law Society of Manitoba. I think that they have an area where they are looking for articles. An area of the website where they have people who are looking for articles. That is probably the first place that I would try. And the other one is that you might choose to contact the Manitoba Bar Association's Internationally Trained Lawyer section as well.
Thank you so much. And I see 2 hands raised up. Rodrigo, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question. You will be self-muted too if you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure
Yes.
can.
Okay, thank you very much. I was just trying to use the chat, but I couldn't. So I have two specific questions. So about this pathway that the university offers of international trained lawyer program.
Mhm.
I understand there are fees, differentiated fees for Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and for international students.
Mhm.
So under this pathway, my doubt is basically which type of fee will be applicable. For instance,
If
a
you're
trained lawyer who is already permanent resident or a
if
citizen.
you're already a permanent resident, it would be the domestic tuition, not the international student tuition.
Okay, thank you. And the second
Welcome.
question is, you mentioned that exactly for civil law backgrounds,
Mhm.
basically NCA doesn't make assessment. They basically require to take the JD, bachelor diploma, or you also said significant exposure to common law. I was wondering if you could elaborate about what do they mean by significant exposure to common law?
Oh,
Means like,
sure.
or, Mhm, thank you.
So, and so as a like so as my so first thing, I do not represent the NCA. Okay, so
Sure,
I'm
I
giving you
understand.
information, but I do not represent the NCA. What happens when people are educated in civil law jurisdictions is either they get a letter that says you have no options, you must take a JD program, a 3-year JD program, which means writing the LSAT and applying for admissions to a JD program. Or they sometimes will give a letter that says you need substantial exposure to the common law. If you complete 4 courses, you can ask us to review your file. And they'll say through a JD program or an LLM program or other accredited program at an accredited law school in Canada. That's us. That's the program. And then you can ask them to review the file once you've completed 4 courses. So if you do the micro-diploma in public law, it's certainly not a guarantee, but what it does do is without having to actually apply to and enroll in a full JD 3-year full-time JD program, is to start it and then get NCA to see what they will do in terms of whether they will then assess you and give you the balance of the requirements to finish. So that's where that fits, because absolutely everybody has to take those 5 core courses. If people are really committed to practicing law and they're really committed to requalifying, they're going to have to take those courses no matter what. So if you're really committed, it's a safe bet to take the courses, but it is not a guarantee as to what NCA will tell you you need to do next. It's still possible that they could come back and say, you still need to take an entire JD program, but at least then you would have completed 5 of the courses. So I don't want to oversell the program to anybody from a civil law jurisdiction. It's not a guarantee. It's a leg in the door.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I see another hand. Oyetola, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question. You are okay.
Sorry, good afternoon. So I'm trying to ask about I think your second question is like mine. For somebody coming from like a law related background. So if you have masters in international law, first degree international law, second degree international law, human rights. Do you, like you said, this course might give you a leg into the system. So I'm just trying to confirm if JD
You
like this will help, or I will need to do the 3 years that you just mentioned now.
From what
Since
you're saying, you should contact the NCA, but if you didn't take an actual law degree,
yeah,
they may require you to take a JD program. You should
a
contact the
JD.
NCA for
Oh,
advice.
okay. All
Yeah,
right. Thank you.
definitely contact the NCA.
All right.
Thank you. And there is one more hand I see here. Ima Omoruyi, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question. Ima, you're self-muted.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll just limit my question to two, and maybe book another section to talk to Lorette about my other questions and concerns. First and foremost, I want to know if one enrolls for this program, and you are a working person, and your schedules are not too flexible, is there any flexibility within the program to accommodate you? That's one.
Mhm.
Then two, is it an automatic access to articling when you're done with this program?
No. So the answer to both questions is no. In terms of the first question, the flexibility is going to be in terms of how many classes you feel you can take based on what the schedule is at the time. There is no way to shift the times of day or the days of the week of the schedule. The course schedule is the course schedule. We're not a very big law school. So what you can do is choose not to take as many courses at the same time. But you can't, there is no, like, once the class schedule has been made, there will not be flexibility around that. In terms of your second question, nothing is an automatic ticket to articles. What getting a certificate of qualification from NCA does is qualifies you to article. Just like when someone graduates from a JD program at any law school in Canada, they are not guaranteed articles. They have to go apply and are often people come to groups and firms come to law schools to recruit, but but getting the job, getting the articles really primarily falls upon the student, and we provide a lot of supports at the law school. It's our law students through the Director of Professional Development get assistance with getting placed with articles when they are our students, but we obviously are not able to and not set up to provide that kind of assistance to folks who are not our students. That's the piece where people tend to find it a bit more difficult to find articles. That's where with the feedback that we've received from other internationally trained lawyers, that's been a bit of a stumbling block. And we're working on that. It's a little too soon for me to make any announcements, but we're working in tandem with the profession as a whole to try to improve folks' chances of getting articling positions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we have another hand here. Menelik, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question.
Thank you, Haris, for the presentation. My question relates to the English language requirement.
Yes.
For a person who did his Bachelor of Laws degree in English as a medium of instruction, is the English language proficiency still a requirement?
You should check our website. I don't know them by heart. I'll be very honest with you. Check our website and check our website, not the University of Manitoba generally. Go into the ITL program for the Faculty of Law through the QR code that I had on the screen. And if you click on how to apply an admission requirements next to either Micro-Diploma, it'll take you to what the language requirements are. And you very well may be exempt. I just don't know them off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
And we have Rodrigo here. I'm going to unmute you, Rodrigo.
Hi, thank you. I forgot one more question. My apologies. So again, for the international student program from the UFM, do the university also require an educational credential assessment aside from the transcripts and diplomas?
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Now NCA might, but
yes,
we won't. We don't.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have 10 more minutes. If you have any questions, please type it in the Q&A panel or in the chat or raise your hand, then I will unmute you so you can ask your question. I'm checking, and I guess
it looks like there's a question from Menelik SM. There's a hand up.
yeah, we opened
Yeah,
them like
I've already asked. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay.
I think that's all for the questions. Thank you, Laurel, for joining us today. And thank you all the participants for your excellent questions. If they have any more questions, can they send it to me email, and can I send it to you, Laurel?
Sure can, or you can just simply contact the program through our website. There is an email address, ITLP, I'll put this in the chat, ITLP at, and that email address will come to me.
Thank you so much. And now I'm going to share my screen really quick. And if you are not currently a Manitoba Start client, you can call our front desk, visit in person, or complete our online registration form that is on our website under For Newcomers tab, Register for Services. As you can see, you can click here and register online by clicking this button. And by registering with Manitoba Start, you will connect with settlement services and have access to career services that can assist you with resume development, career planning, job search strategies, and interview skills. For a list of programs and services offered by Career Services, go under the Career Services tab. As you can see, we offer many workshops and many resources here. And lastly, please take a look at our events page. You can check our events from events calendar. And if you miss a webinar and if you want to watch it later, you can go to webinar recordings and you can check out our webinars.
Et si vous souhaitez être connecté à la communauté francophone pour obtenir de l'aide à l'établissement ou à la recherche d'emploi, veuillez contacter EDA. J'espère que vous avez trouvé cela utile.
Don't forget that Manitoba Start is here to assist you by providing services such as personalized career coaching, developing your resume, or job search assistance to find you sustainable employment. Please follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest events. So on behalf of Laurel Harris from ITL Programs, University of Manitoba, and the Manitoba Start team, thank you for attending and stay well.
Thank you.